Have you ever noticed how fragmented the real estate development process actually is? With so many moving parts, most project managers struggle to keep their projects progressing efficiently. I've been working as an end-to-end project manager across global real estate projects for 15 years now, so I can give a rare insider's perspective on every stage of the development process. Because once you can see the big picture, every job becomes much easier. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the 9 stages of development from feasibility all the way through to handover. We'll highlight the biggest risks at each stage and the best tools that you can use to mitigate these risks, some of which I'll be giving away for free. So keep listening to find out how you can download them. Stage number 1 is market research and feasibility. And every step that follows depends on this first stage. You're not just deciding where to build, but we're actually testing whether it's worth building at all. Specifically, you'll need to run a market analysis to see what else is in the area, what the finished project is currently selling at, and what is the most likely development that's going to be received well by the local community. Because too many developers seem to fall in love with the site before they run the numbers, and then 6 months later they realize that the margins when reviewed never actually stacked up in the first place. So your goal here at stage number 1 is simple. You just need to answer these 3 questions. 1, what are we going to build? 2, how much will it cost to build? And 3, how can I maximize the returns of my investment? And this starts with comparable studies, early design options, and high-level feasibility models. These feasibility models will cover things like the land cost, the construction estimate, the soft cost, which is your professional fees, and of course your exit value of the development you've just created. You'll also need to work in there a contingency if things don't always go accordingly to plan. And finally, you'll measure how all of that stacks against the estimated profit that you'd anticipate making on a project like this. Useful tools you can use at this stage are benchmark data and cost databases, which are usually available on big consulting firms' web pages, usually free to download. Or even better, you can use an automated feasibility template to speed up the entire process, where you'll punch in the numbers and the document will feed you the result. I'm giving away my comprehensive site selection checklist for free, along with some other tools that I'm yet to cover, but the details will be at the end of the video. And this is also where your exit strategy defines the entire project, whether you're going to be creating a build to sell, a build to lease, or a long-term asset hold. And if you get this wrong at this stage, then every subsequent decision from funding to design and even marketing will compound your risk of not achieving your maximum returns. So before you even think about design, lock in a clear statement of where, what, and why you're building. Because that's how the top tier developers avoid expensive mistakes before they even get started. And once you know what you're building, your estimated budget and your target returns, then it's time to look at the funding, the structure, and the budgeting for the whole project. And this stage isn't just about how much you need, it's how you source your funding and how long you'll need your funding for. And you may even need to consider a capital stack. And if you're new to the term capital stacking, it simply means that you're using more than one source of finance for your project. You might ask, are we going to go and use our own equity? Have we got any savings that we can put into the purchase of the land? Or are we going to go to the bank and we're going to borrow some debt? Or better yet, do we have a load of rich friends and family who can help us finance our project for a piece of the pie and a return? Once you've made your decisions on how you plan to fund, you enter the funding agreement. So here you need to know what is the length of time that people are going to be funding your project. So you'll need an outline program. And what are they going to be getting in return for it? How much of a percentage of the revenues and the profits are they going to receive for lending you the money? Will you pay the bank an interest rate and offer the investor a portion of the profits? All of this gets decided within this agreement. And within this stage, you'll also need an overview of your high-level budget and cash flow, because that's the most important thing that people worry about. How much are you lending and can you pay them back, and is it enough? So useful tools to use here are forecasting tools that test sensitivity. So what if the building cost increases by 5% throughout the duration of your construction process? What if the interest rates rise by 0.5%? All of these will impact your end returns. Of course, the investor will be very keen to know what these sensitivities are. If you get this stage wrong, you risk ploughing ahead with an unprofitable project, or definitely not meeting meeting the expected profit margins that your investor would expect. Get it right, and every decision following this stage will run from a position of control and confidence. Then we move into step 3. We've got the money, and now we're going to look at actually doing our due diligence and buying the site. Because stage number 3 is land acquisition and due diligence. Now this is where we really need to identify the early risks and take legal ownership. I've seen too many developers try and push ahead once they found the perfect site, only to discover buried problems later. Things like easements or contamination, or access rights by third parties, or unseen technical constraints like utilities in the ground that blow the budget wide open. This stage is all about protecting yourself before you take the legal ownership of the plot of land that you're planning on developing. You're assessing 3 key risk types here. Number 1 is the legal risk. What are the title issues? What are the rights of way? What are the ransom strips? What are the easements? What are the zoning requirements that you'll have to abide by? And how does that impact your initial concept development? Number 2 is technical. What are the contamination risks? What's in the ground? Is there any ground contamination? Like we said earlier, where are the utilities? Is there any flood risk? All of these items have the potential to completely ruin your budget. And the final is obviously the commercial. Whether the revenues and the expected profit still make sense once those risks are costed and factored in and added into your construction costs. For example, I once worked on a joint venture with the UK Ministry of Defence, and we discovered actual military tanks had been buried in our ground. The remediation bill was just this empty black hole that slowly swallowed our healthy profit margins day by day. The best developers approach it systematically. They run full site investigations, they do legal reviews, and they do environmental checks before exchanging any contracts. They need to know the details before they enter a legal agreement. Because what you'll need to do is you'll need to feed those findings back into your initial feasibility and reprice the land accordingly and negotiate from the facts. So for example, let's say you do find that your ground is contaminated by radon or has some kind of costly constraint and an access to it. It doesn't necessarily mean that the deal is dead in the water. If the remediation cost is £1 million or $1 million, you don't just walk away. You bring this information to the table, you have an understanding of what the remediation will cost you, and you negotiate the land value down by roughly the amount that the remediation will cost, plus an additional contingency, just in case you're below the initial estimation for how much those remedial works will be. The same as if you were buying a house and the survey came back stating that it needed major works on the foundations. You wouldn't necessarily walk away from the house purchase, but you definitely go to the vendor and say your price needs to be minus what it's going to cost us to make good these foundations. So the goal here is simple. Know the risk, quantify them, price them into your feasibility, negotiate a fair land value, and then finally buy the land. And once the contracts are signed and the land is exchanged, then we move into stage 4, which is the concept design and approval stage. Now you can do this as you're going along with the land purchase process, so you can make sure you're purchasing land with an approval, but for the sake of this video we're going to try and do it in a sequential order, because this is where your project finally starts to take shape and where your numbers start to become drawings and ideas become something tangible. Many developers run the risk of designing without anchoring back that design to the initial feasibility, and the result is beautiful concepts that can't really be built. We've all seen certain projects in certain parts of the world that have these amazing CGIs that never actually come to anything. And the goal here is balance. You want some aesthetic, but you want it to be functional. You want the cost to be fair and actually constructible. And you want your municipality or government compliance all working together to create the strongest possible development. And that means aligning 3 critical forces. The first is the architect, chasing creativity. The second is the cost managers who are protecting the budget. And the third is to satisfy the authorities who need to ensure compliance. And as the project manager, you're the translator between all of them. Your primary job is to keep the concept commercially honest while still getting everyone excited about the vision. And the way we do this is we get an overall master plan, or an initial concept that is created by the architects and signed off by the municipalities or the government agencies to say, this is the general idea of what we're going to be building. Please can anyone state now if they have any issues with it before we start spending more money moving ahead. Once we have this agreement, this is where we really need to start paying attention and fleshing out the budget and starting our value engineering process. And if you think that value engineering at this stage is unnecessary or maybe too early, then watch my video on 3 reasons why projects fail to find out how value engineering as early in the design stage as possible saved one of my projects $12 million. And also, as promised, I'm giving away my development value engineering complete end-to-end checklist. It's got over 140 different items that you can review within your development to see where you can start making some additional clever savings. And it's not about cutting costs and making everything look cheap, it's about really focusing on the elements that add value to your project. Details of this again will be at the end of the video, but if there's one takeaway you get from this section of the video, it's this: designing developments that don't match the research, the budget, or the previously approved developments around you will never fly. So once you've done this step, you can finally move into the next stage, which is going to be the detailed design stage. This is where you'll start getting legal approvals to build what you want to build. And this is where you really need to start getting into the detail of the architecture, the engineering, the systems, the mechanical, the electrical, the plumbing, and the specification. Everything that's physically going to make up the completed building. The kind of details that we embed at this stage is things like how much concrete do we need to put into the ground? How deep do our foundations need to be? What is the slab thickness for each individual floor to make sure the building is meeting the targeted requirements and specifications that would be expected of a high quality construction project? And as you can probably tell, this is where the budget is going to start getting a lot more granular. So this is where you really need to start bringing in your cost consultants or your quantity surveyors or your commercial teams to make sure that at this stage, as the detail is getting so finite, so are the ones and zeros in the figures you're using. Your job as the project manager is to keep these 2 things aligned: the approved concept and the initial design strategy, and the agreed budget and timelines. This is where using coordination tools like building information modeling, clash detection systems that highlight issues before they arise on site are absolutely vital, because every clash that's missed in design can cost 10 times more to fix during construction. And once you have your detailed design finalized and complete, this is the step where you secure your final government and stakeholder approvals. So everybody has their turn to look through the details that you've created and stamp it to say, yes, you have our authority and our permission to start on site and actually start building this thing. So once we have our detailed design locked in, with our budget still in check, it's time to move on to stage 6, which is the procurement stage, where we start to tender the contracts for the people and the contractors who are actually going to be building this development. Specifically, this is where we give our detailed design to the contractors in the market, and then they allow them to price for the job, and then we select our contractors and suppliers from the best possible pool. Your goal here is simple: to get the best value and the most accurate price for the scope of your project. This starts with complete and coordinated tender documents, followed by shortlisting competent and project relevant contractors. And once the bids are in, don't just compare totals, compare assumptions, compare what's been left out. Because the biggest mistake you can make at this stage is underestimating how expensive uncertainty can be. Because if your contractors don't have enough detail, then they can't price the entire project. So don't just accept the first bids from contractors, because if you're receiving more accurate information during the tender process, although it's not favourable, then you can ask for the best and final offers once you've given your tenderers more accurate detail and obviously more time to price the additional information they've received. The more specific your project brief and tender documents, the more accurate your contractor quotes will be, because this alone can save millions on large projects. I've created a really helpful tender document deliverables checklist that you can download at the end of the video. So now you've gone to tender, chosen your contractors and signed the contract, it's time to build. And that brings us to stage 7, which is construction. This stage is all about turning drawings into reality, and the focus is always the same: program, cost, quality and safety. When everything is aligned, this stage runs like a well-oiled machine. But too often developers start on site before the design is fully resolved, and that's where momentum starts to break down, because you're building and redesigning at the same time, and it will burn time and money. I've worked on projects with nearly 3,000 people on site at once, and the best run site feels like a well-run military operation. Everyone knows their role. Communication is constant and safety comes before everything because people's lives are at stake. And that might sound dramatic, but it's true. In the UK, roughly 40 people die on site every year. And in other countries, that number is much, much higher. One of the biggest mistakes a developer can make is rushing to start before they've finished proper planning. The ideal scenario is to plan slow and build fast. At this stage, digital dashboards, progress trackers, and daily coordination meetings keep everyone accountable and organized. So the specifics you need to focus on here are build with care, keep momentum, and deliver safely, on time and on budget. The next stage is labeled as stage 8, but if it wasn't so confusing, I'd actually have 2 stage 7s, because sales and marketing should run in parallel with construction. You want momentum on site and in the market. If you wait until the building's half finished before you start promoting, demand may have cooled. The smart move is to build interest early, ideally as soon as design is locked and visuals are ready. This stage is all about matching the right product to the right audience. If you're selling family homes, your messaging and price point will look very different from a luxury villa or a retail park. You need to know exactly who you're speaking to and make sure they can actually afford what you're offering. A simple way to stay ahead is to use a marketing dashboard that tracks leads, reservations, and deposits against the construction program. That way you can see real-time progress and adjust your strategy before problems appear. So the key message for sales and marketing is sell the thing, lease the thing, fill the thing. Whatever the exit strategy is, this is when you actually need to start getting the return on your investment. And once the site has actually finished being built, we move on to stage 9, handover and operations. This is the final stretch and where the project stops being a build and becomes a building. Everything you've done up to this point comes down to one thing: delivering quality that works from day one. Handover can be an afterthought, and if you rush to get people moved in before the final checks are done, then you run the risk of your reputation taking a massive hit. This stage is all about commissioning, snagging and documentation. Every switch and light and system needs to be tested and logged and signed off before anyone moves in. This is where you'll want to start using tools like a digital snagging or quality control app, which let you photograph issues, assign them instantly to a team member, and track the completion in real time. But the main point here is buyers or tenants are moving in. So this is where we exit. And if you're in the business of leasing, this is where the property management comes in. Making sure that tenants are sticking to their end of the agreement, keeping the place clean, tidy, and making sure it's not going to fall apart after their tenure. And if you're more in the build to sell market, then this is where people move in and take ownership and it becomes their home. And as one of the few end-to-end development managers in the industry, I can tell you that every stage of development comes with its own challenges. But the truth is, it's not about which stage is the hardest. It's about keeping the momentum, protecting your team, and solving problems before they take off. Because that's what makes a great project manager. If you're just getting into construction as a project manager, then watch this next video. You'll see why you've made the right choice. And if you're curious about the numbers, then check out this video to see how you can really boost your salary within this role. And as we discussed all throughout this video, there's a link in the description to download all of these tools for free that we discussed to help you in your development journey.